But let's get to step 2. Okay, marketing 101. Who's your audience, right? Who can benefit from your message? You got to know who your audience is, because if you don't know who your audience is, you're not going to be able to shape a message that resonates with them. So you've got to know who you're talking to. Let's talk about, though, the person or the professional who's got multiple audiences. Many of us do. Let's say you're a gym owner, all right? So you can gym owner, you got these 40 to 50, and I'm not picking on men, but you do have these 40 or 50-year-old men, you know, they've got that beer belly, they're paunchy, they want to firm up, tone up, right? They're one of your audiences. Maybe you've got that 40 to 50-year-old woman who's just gone through a divorce. She wants to firm up as well because she's now out on the dating scene. It's another audience, right? You probably have those 20 to 30-something people who are in the gym because they want to get buff. Then you may have a whole other audience. You may have that 60 to 70-year-old guy or girl who is finally at the point in their life where they can afford to put attention on themselves. They've raised their kids, they're retiring. Now they know they want to get healthy, and they know they've got to be in the gym to get healthy. Well, let's face it, your message to that 60 or 70-year-old is not going to resonate with that 20-year-old. Would you agree? Different message, right? So you've got to really know what who your audience is and how to shape your message. And because we're talking about really building your brand as an expert celebrity, let's talk about the media and where you're going to find your audiences, okay? So if you want to use talk radio, that's where you're going to mostly find men. They skew higher to men than women. And the age is 35 to 64. So if that's your demo, talk radio is a great platform for you. If you want to use talk radio to find women, then I recommend pursuing interviews on the religious shows. For some reason, they skew very high to women. Whenever I have a woman who wants to do talk radio interviews, I usually focus her there because it's a very loyal, devoted, and female audience. Okay? But women in general, say you're targeting women in general. Well, that's daytime TV talk shows. Your morning shows. They're looking for light, fluffy, entertaining. Again, that gym owner, it's a great place to be, showing women how to get in shape. So national TV, that's where your more business topics are. CNN, CNBC, MSNBC. It's not daytime morning talk show. If you're looking to target men and women that are 45 plus, that's traditional print. I don't know about you ladies, I'm the older generation. I cannot start my morning without that cup of coffee and that hard copy newspaper in my hand. It's just a habit, right? Then if you're targeting the younger generation, and really everyone today, that's online print and social media. And you absolutely have to be there. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So then, step 3, ladies. You got to ask yourself, okay, how is my message going to help my audience? And it may sound like a simple question, but this is the point, if you're really creating a book, this is the point where you have to kind of hone in on what's the tips? What is the advice? Out of all the things that I know, what are the most essential tips and advice that I can offer? Because that's what you want to put in your book. We've all got a lot of information, but you've got to kind of separate it out and figure out what's going to be the most important, valuable information for your book, okay? Next thing is, why are you the one to bring this information to them? You know, when I first sat and wrote this question, I kind of laughed, and I thought, obvious, because I've been doing it for so long. But you know what? What it forces you to look at when you kind of start asking yourself that question, what it's going to bring up are all these anecdotal stories that you have to support the information and the experience that you're going to write about. And we all know, you know, if you're writing a book, it's storytelling. You want to have some really good stories. 5th question. Identify how you're unique and different from your competition. Now here's the thing, if you've really gone through step 1, 2, 3, 4, by the time you get to step 5, you're going to have it. Let me tell you a quick story about 3 clients I had. They were all cardiologists, all in practice, okay? They could have all written the same book, but they didn't. They all really understood what they were passionate about. One was a former director with the Pritikin Institute. He was very, very passionate about diet, Mediterranean diets for heart health. So his book was about Mediterranean diets, and it had recipes, and it was a great book. Had a second cardiologist who had actually experienced heart failure himself, went into the hospital. When he got in the hospital, and now as a patient, he realized, you know what? There's all these end-of-life issues that he didn't really cover. So his book was about end-of-life issues. He actually set up a nonprofit organization, you know, like a last will and testament, having power of attorney, the do not resuscitate forms, all of that. We never know what may happen, but you want to get this all intact, in place. His book was about that. The third cardiologist wrote a book about the different tests that you can take to detect heart problems early on so you could prevent it. So you see what I mean? It's like there were 3 cardiologists, but they all figured out what their passion was, what was different and unique about them. And that's what you need to hone in on. So you've got it. You've figured it out. You've written that book, hopefully, right? You've published it. Now we've got to figure out, well, what's my plan, right? So hopefully that goal is writing a book, step 1. And that's step 1 of the Celebritize Yourself method. Step 2 is, okay, ladies, now you got to get out there and promote yourself. And if you thought writing the book might have been difficult, guess what? Getting out there and promoting yourself. It's a whole other journey that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So you really want to be committed to the process before you actually do it. Step 3, well, once you're out there and you're doing speaking engagements and you're out there in the media, well, you're building your celebrity through those appearances. And step 3 is actually sell. But you're selling by virtue of positioning yourself as an expert in your field. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about the media, because I'm hoping that many of you are actually going to do this and apply this method, right? So you're going to go out there in the media. Let me just share with you some of the idiosyncrasies about the media. Print coverage. I think print coverage is king. Oops. Can't do that. Getting quoted in newspapers and magazines is really fabulous positioning for you, because it really says you're an expert. And today, we know the traditional publications, they're shrinking. I was just looking at a statistic the other day. Chicago Tribune, for example, their circulation is something on their daily paper, something like 300,000. But you know what? Their online publication has got over 1 million visitors per month. So you can see the difference is a lot more people online looking at their publication. So you've got to, so this is a great place for you to get coverage. And you know what? They're looking for content. All these online publications are looking for content 24/7. So you really can be providing that through giving them articles and tips. TV appearances. There's all kinds of specialty programming today for any topic imaginable on radio and TV. Then you've got social media networking. You know, here's a fact. Whether we like it or not, we are judged today by the number of followers that we have. I was at a writers' conference a couple of months ago, right? And there were these literary agents talking to these writers who were all interested in getting that contract with Simon & Schuster. And they were saying to them, look, don't even bother. Unless you have 10 million followers, don't even bother. They're not going to look at you. And that's how we're judged today, not just in the publishing industry, but almost any industry, even as speaking. If you're looking to build yourself as a speaker, you need to have a big following. So let's talk about, I want to go into the 5 rules for pitching the media, because this is really important, ladies. And this is really my secret sauce. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned is that, you know, I think they actually mentioned it, my business is pay for performance. I'm one of the pioneers in the pay for performance model. What does that mean? That actually means that we guarantee media for our clients. And why am I telling you this? Not because I'm pitching my company, but for you to understand how important this information is. Because we guarantee media. So I'm on the line with every time. We had to figure out how to make sure we were getting media coverage for our clients. So, step 1, and this is what we do for all of our clients. 1, never pitch your product, your business, or your book. You know, sometimes I see these press releases coming through from PR agencies or even some book publicists from publishing companies, and I have to laugh. Nobody cares that you've moved your company into a new building or that you've just hired a new vice president. No, they're looking for news, ladies. That news is relevant to you, but it ain't relevant to their audience. So you never pitch your product. You always pitch the problem that your product solves. You get that? The other thing is, you never pitch yourself. You may be very important, but again, they don't care about that. What they care about is the valuable information they can pass on to their readers. So you always pitch the issue that you're an expert on. Quick example, I had a client who was a pediatric endocrinologist, and he came to me with a product. I wish he had come to me with a book, but he came to me with a product, okay? Well, I can't go out and pitch the media on this great product. And I also can't go out and pitch, who he is. He's fantastic, great credentials, but it's not going to go any far. Instead, we had to go out addressing the horrible problem we have in the States, I don't know if it's the same here in Canada, of obesity in children. It's a big problem in the US. Also diabetes in children, type 2 diabetes. It's a huge problem. Well, enter in my client, this doctor, a pediatric endocrinologist, who's going to talk to your audience about the things you as a parent can do to actually turn that around. Now, of course, he's going to be able to mention his product in the interview, but it isn't the focus of the interview. Do you get the idea? The other thing, the most important thing to remember is when you're pitching the media, the media is all about news. So the more you're able to tie your message into the news, the better your chance is of actually getting some pickup, being invited as a guest or being interviewed, right? So you want to tie your message. We were very fortunate. I had a client who came on board, Janet Pfeiffer, and she was an anger management specialist. And Janet, at that time, was, remember the Mel Gibson tirade? Did you all guys experience that here? Okay. Well, she came on board just as Mel Gibson was doing his tirade, okay? So, it was pretty crazy. Well, who better to talk to? The media was on the news all the time, so the media was looking for this specialist who could talk about Mel Gibson's tirade and what he should and shouldn't be doing. So it was a perfect window of opportunity. So whenever you can, tie your message to the news. Now, maybe something isn't in the news. The other thing that you can do is use Chase's calendar, okay? You can Google that. And there's an online calendar because maybe your product or service has to do with breast cancer, for example. Well, October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. February, for example, is National Black History Month. So use that. Use holidays. We have a doctor, a dentist, who's got bad breath products all over the country in stores, even in Canada. We book them all over US and Canada. So, well, who knows? April is National Fresh Breath Awareness Month. All right, so talk to my doctor who's going to tell you how to go from bad breath to fresh breath, okay? That's the kind of thing. February, Valentine's Day, believe you me, we're out there talking about how to have a great Valentine's Day with fresh breath and not have bad breath. So that's the kind of thing that you do. I'm going to try to run through this quickly because I know I only have a little bit time. But so now, you're invited as a guest on radio, right? You've never done a radio interview before. Here are some really important tips. First thing, forget about engaging the audience, guys. You want to engage the host. Why? Because the host has already engaged the audience. That's why he's got a show. So if you engage that host, he is going to, or she, will pass it on to the audience. The audience is going to feel that synchronicity. So you want to engage the host. Learn about him, Google him, listen to the show if you can. Second thing, and this is actually valid no matter what medium you're using, identify your takeaways. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, sit down and figure out what are the 3 things that you want that listening audience to come away with. What 3 important pieces of information do you want to leave that audience? Okay? That's the takeaway. Third thing, smile when you're on the air. I know that can be a little difficult when you're doing a 5 o'clock morning interview and you're just, rolled out of bed. But you gotta smile when you're on the air because even if there isn't a camera on you, people can hear how you sound, and people want to work with people that are uptone, right? The other thing is you never use a cell phone when you're doing a radio interview because you could lose the signal. If you lose the signal, guess what? They're not calling you back. They could care less. They're moving on. So never use a cell phone. The other thing, don't sound like an infomercial. That is the quickest way to get cut off. That host is going to find something to turn, all of a sudden there's going to be a hot news story he has to report on, or that's what he's going to tell you or his audience. You will lose that interview. Okay, print media tips. Respond quickly. Why? Because journalists are usually on a deadline. If you get a call from a journalist or an email from a journalist who wants to do an interview with you, don't wait for the next day to respond, because guess what? If you do, they're moving on. You're gonna lose that interview. Respond right away. They are on deadline. Second thing, read up on the writer. Google them. They're a writer. There's going to be a lot of information about them, because the more affinity you can strike with them, the better the interview is going to be. Third thing, prepare good notes. That goes back to the takeaways. Really have them written down. Know what the message is that you want to communicate. The other thing, provide direct answers. When they ask you a question, answer it. Don't tell a 5 or 10 minute story. Answer it directly. Okay, the other thing, and this is important, and this is what I'm violating right now, but I just want to get through all this for you. Speak clearly and at a moderate pace, because most of them are taking shorthand, and they're going to quote you, and you want them to quote you correctly. So speak clearly, speak at a moderate tone, okay? The other thing, keep it professional, ladies. They don't really care about your husband, your cat, your dog, your kids. They really don't. Keep it professional, to the point. Okay, TV. Whenever you can, use visuals. If you've got a jewelry line that you're showcasing, if you've got a cookbook, you're going to do some cooking segment. I've even done insurance agent, where I'll use graphs. So wherever possible, use a visual, because it's a visual medium. Make your points succinct, because with your TV appearances, you've only got about 2.5 minutes, sometimes 5 max. So you really want to have your points defined. The other thing, be mindful of body language, of course. You've got to be aware of how you're sitting, how your legs are, hanging from the chair, and assume the camera is always on. Social media tips. I can tell with this audience, I don't really have to teach you much, but don't overpost, obviously. Be consistent. Stay on that social network. Interact. You've got followers, interact with them. Join groups. Talk about, offer advice or message, and in that process, you're going to be able to tie in your book, your product, or service. And most importantly, share your media heads. If you're being invited as a guest on a radio show, well, you want to tell your followers you're going to be on that show a week prior in advance. So hopefully they're going to tune in. But then you're also going to tell them about it when it's done, and you're going to put a link to that radio interview, or to your TV appearance, or to that publication that just printed an article where you're quoted as an expert. Last thing, the ROI of celebritizing yourself. Now, I call it marketing gold. Whenever I have a client who calls me and says, or a prospective client and says, look, I'm interested in your service, but I really want to know, how many books am I going to sell? How many units of product am I going to sell? How many new clients am I going to get? I'm like, forget about it, because this is the wrong thing. If that's what you've got your attention on, this ain't it. What this is about is really, it's marketing. It's building your visibility. And like Faye pointed out, you know what? If nobody knows about your business, they ain't going to buy it. So it's really about getting yourself known, getting your product, your service known, but also the credibility that comes with being interviewed as a guest. You can't pay a price for that. You can buy advertising spots or print space, but having somebody endorse you, that third-party endorsement that you get when you're interviewed as a guest on radio or TV or quoted in a newspaper or magazine, it's absolutely priceless. And there's endless cross-promotion activities like we talked about. You post it on your website, you send it around to your clients, you send it around to your prospective clients. Hopefully you all have a marketing database that you've created. You send it to them, you post it on social media. The point is, it positions you as an expert in your field, and that's what the ROI is, of building your brand as an expert in your field, okay? Last thing, dream big. And a little story about this. A couple of months ago, I was asked by a publication to do an interview. It was a print interview, and they said they were going to send me the question, and I much prefer that, because that way I can craft my answer, right? So she sent over the question, and it was, identify 5 things that you would tell your 21-year-old self. I was like, wow, that is a great question. So I'm like, okay, here I am. Okay, here's that 21-year-old self. I have no clue what I was thinking about when I was 21. This is way too far back, right? But I really kind of had to take a look at it. And I started coming up with all these things, right, that I would tell myself. But the most important thing, I finally honed it down to 5, but the most important thing that I would tell myself is dream big. The thing is, I didn't do that when I was 21. I don't know why. I think the thing is, I didn't really know what I was capable of. I just didn't. I had wonderful parents who always encouraged me. They didn't do that to me. I just didn't know what I was capable of. And I didn't really understand that I could actually achieve the things that I set out to do. So my advice to you ladies and to that 21-year-old self, dream big. And if you haven't actually sat down and written up what your dream is or what your vision is, you got to do it. You really have to have it there. And you got to have the confidence that you can actually achieve it. And that's why I love this Reverend Jesse Jackson quote. If you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. And I got to tell you, ladies, I actually believe that's true, and I apply that in my own life because there's many goals that I'm looking to accomplish that I haven't. And I do. I have to tell you also, as a woman in business for 23 years, it hasn't been necessarily an easy road staying in business and having a successful business. There were 3 things that I want to share with you that kind of kept me going. One of them is courage. It takes a lot of courage to have your own business, to be an entrepreneur. Particularly, I listened to Faye's story. Oh my God, that was very courageous. But every one of us have our own story. Courage. The second thing is confidence. It takes confidence that you can actually achieve your dream. It takes confidence that you can do what you set out to do. And you know what the interesting thing is? When you build that business and you launch that business and you start doing it, the confidence just kind of builds exponentially without you doing anything because you're doing it. So you have to believe that you can actually do it and have the confidence in yourself that you can. Third thing, perseverance. That is critical because I've been through the highs, I've been through the worst case scenario. Many times I wanted to give it all up, but I didn't. So when those obstacles come at you, you gotta persevere. You gotta believe that you can overcome any obstacle. So those 3 things, courage, confidence, perseverance, that's my gift to you from being in business for 23 years. So I wish every one of you a great life filled with lots of love, lots of laughter, and lots of great success. Thank you so much.